Hello, and welcome to the Smile Revolution Show. I am Mindy Fradkin, also known as Princess Wow, as you can see below. And we raise awareness to the healing power of a genuine smile. I don't smile all the time, but it's about giving and receiving smiles. Sometimes so I know some people do smile all the time. Well, I've had to overcome a lot in my life, and I wasn't always smiling. Anyway, welcome live or on replay. Welcome both, but it's always great when people come on live too. So anyway, this is my 187th show since March 2020. However, I'm a former radio show host, and I do a lot of things. I'm a woman of many hats. I make hats. I singer songwriter. I play a little ukulele. I'm founder of the Smile Revolution, as you know. And then, well, here it is right there. And what else do I do? I am also a performer, a writer. I do one-woman shows, do this show, and I paint on clothing. Is there anything else? I don't know. I probably do more things too. Anyway, I do elder care too. I'm taking care of a friend of mine. And so anyway, I'm not going to talk too much tonight because I've got a really great interview that's kind of it's like a little bit longer than my other ones. So, but somebody wants to say hello. Gumby. He wants to give you a big hug and smile. And who else? I don't know. Let's see. Who else wants to say hello? Well, you can tell I've done a lot of children's shows over the years. Okay, so this is my friend. He's always smiling. He, she, they, I don't know what gender. And let's see, I have a few quotes, and then I'm going to bring on Robert Burke Warren and give you his bio. Okay, so I've always been into quotes my whole life. And so I'm going to read you some because they always really inspire me. Okay, so Tim Tebow said, regardless of whatever I do, I know what my purpose in life is, to make a difference in people's lives. And Langston Hughes said, like a welcome summer rain, humor may suddenly cleanse and cool the earth, the air, and you. And let's see, from timeforthinkers.com, which I don't know if it exists anymore, but these cards are really good. It's Mr. Eckhart said, if the only prayer you said in your whole life was thank you, that would suffice. And then it says, have you ever just decided to feel grateful in a disappointing situation, then had something fabulous happen? And then Winnie the Pooh, A.A. Milne. What day is it? Asked Pooh. It's today, squeaked Piglet. My favorite day, said Pooh. Describe a moment in time when you were purely happy, just giddy and gleeful, for no reason at all, or for very little reason. Okay, so my tickets aren't on sale yet, but I'm doing my new one-woman show in New York City, April 11th, at Pangea NYC, and hopefully my tickets are going on sale soon. They should be going on sale very soon. So anyway, I'm just letting everybody know. Okay, and it's like storytelling, autobiographical, and I play the ukulele in between my stories. And I do an interactive hat happening that I do at the end. And what else I do? Okay. Anyway, it's really fun. It's going to be really inspiring. And it's called Princess Wow in Woodstock, How a Hat Designer Started a Revolution. Okay. So enough about me. Robert Burke Warren is a writer, performer, and musician. His work has appeared in Salon, The Weeklings, Akashic Books, Texas Music, Brooklyn Parent, Woodstock Times, Longform, Vulture, Paste, to name a few. It goes on and on. Anyway, he's ghostwritten for Gregg Allman, and his liner notes appear on the award-winning CD Live at Caffe Lena. His debut novel, Perfectly Broken, is out now. As a songwriter, he has released 7 CDs, 2 as Robert Burke Warren and 5 as Uncle Rock, which I was a big fan of years ago. His work also appears on albums by Rosanne Cash and rockabilly queen Wanda Jackson. The Roots used his tune, The Elephant in the Room, as John McCain's entrance theme on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. Anyway, there's more to... Oh, and also in the mid-'90s, he performed as Buddy Holly in the West End musical Buddy, the Buddy Holmes story. And he lives in Catskills with his family. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Mindy.
It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in so long. No, it's actually, you didn't see me, but I saw you because I was just at the Bowie birthday. Huh?
I saw you.
Oh, you did?
I could see you.
You could see me dancing on the side?
Yes.
Okay. With Dog and Penny and my crowd over there, over there. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great.
It was so great. It was my first time.
Oh, yeah?
You'll see Karen Millman invited me because she goes every year.
Yeah.
And so she invited me. And then I found out that Doug Milford was singing.
Yeah.
Which I never even knew he was a singer.
Right.
Until weeks before. And then it was so exciting. Because that was so exciting part of it too, to see after all those years that he performed. And he was great.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah. What night did you come? Friday or Saturday?
Saturday.
Good. Because that's, in my opinion, that was the better of the two nights. I mean, Friday night was great.
Yeah.
Friday night was great. But you're a performer, so you'll appreciate this. As I hadn't done like a 2-night stand, where I had to do this show wherein I sing approximately 22 songs. I hadn't done that and then done it again the next night. I hadn't done that in a long time, and I was a little apprehensive. I didn't need to be, but I'm a worrier by nature. But anyway, so Friday night, I was holding back just a little bit, because I was like, I got to do this again tomorrow. And nobody would have known, I don't think, but I was just holding back a little bit with my voice. Whereas on Saturday, I was not holding back at all.
No.
And it was fun. It was really good. And I could have done it again Sunday night. So, but anyway, Saturday night was the better of the two.
Okay. The whole thing. Yeah. I mean, it was packed. I mean, it was like standing room only. I mean, it's amazing. Well, Karen had told me it's like so many people go. Yeah. And I was singing and dancing almost the whole time. I'm glad you had some slow numbers because I would have danced the whole time.
Good. Yeah, we got to throw the ballads in there. Definitely. Those are some of my favorite ones to sing is the ballads.
Yeah, it was great. So anyway, but you and I met years ago. I always like to talk about how I meet people. Okay, so you and I met. I don't even know how. Maybe was it at what was Thanksgiving and Christmas at the community center? I used to always sing. I know, right?
Yeah.
So I remember seeing you there, but I don't know if we met before that or not. But I was doing a lot of children's events, and I connected with you because of my some project I was doing, and then I got your CD. You were Uncle Rock,
right?
And I still listen to it every once in a while, and I love this album.
I love hearing that. I love it when people who are not children, but are children at heart, when they tell me that they listen to the Uncle Rock CDs. That's been since the beginning of doing Uncle Rock, which started 2005. Yeah, parents would come up to me and they would be like, we listen to the stuff when the kids are not in the car, and that makes me feel really good. That was the point of Uncle Rock. That was one of my main goals of the whole thing, was to reintroduce music as a multi-generational.
Yeah, right. It's for everybody. It's family entertainment.
Everybody. It's family entertainment, and
it is.
The notion that there's these stark delineations between kids music and teen music and tween music and adult music and middle-aged and old people music. That's all bullshit, and that's kind of a relatively new concept in the course of human history. So I was trying to buck that trend, and but anyway, I'm so glad
you did now, because I love it. It's just really happy and fun, and you're such a great musician. So it's really great, and you have your son Jack when he was little singing on it too, and it's really sweet. It's really wonderful. So anyway, but so I don't know. We met because I moved to the Hudson Valley in 2003,
mm-hmm.
And then
it was right. You were right after us. We were 2002.
Yeah. So anyway, okay, so this book, Cash on Cash, I'll just show everybody, is amazing. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I've always liked Johnny Cash too, but I never knew. I mean, obviously, it's just a deep dive into his life and all the interviews, and you did such a great job. I mean,
Thank you.
putting all your little notes in. It's like explaining in the interviews and then before, and
Sure.
so it's really great. And then, okay, so. And I don't know if you know this, but I was close with Pete Seeger, so like there's a Pete Seeger connection.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's one of the
Yeah,
more
it's Pete
interviews.
Seeger comes threads through everything. It's like
Yeah.
it's amazing.
All roads lead to Pete. Yeah.
They do 1966.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that Johnny was on the show. Johnny and June were on the show. I think it was his last show, the Rainbow
It was
Quest.
his last show. You're right. It was his last show. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, of course, I had to watch it this week on YouTube. And with his taking his shoes off, and he was on drug. He was that was like a drug period, right?
Yeah, he was really high, and
Really high.
I mean, one of the many things I learned putting the book together, although I don't go into it too much because I feel like the focus on his addiction problems was because it's hot copy or whatever, that's always been. But having said that, yeah, in 1966, it's kind of a miracle that he survived the 60s, frankly. I mean, the amount of drugs that he was doing, mostly amphetamines, which were all prescribed. They were not illegal drugs. They were all prescribed. Amphetamines and barbiturates and alcohol. Those are his main things, and in that clip, I don't know. He's definitely one of the fascinating things about the Pete Seeger clip, and your viewers can go to YouTube and see this remarkable interview with June and Johnny, and it was when they were kind of secret paramours at that time. They were not officially
right.
But anyway, they're being interviewed by Pete Seeger on this little show that he had on a UHF station based out of New Jersey, and anyway, Johnny he just is. What's going to say though is as sort of high as he is, he nevertheless, like if you look at it, and I realized this when I transcribed the interview, when you look at the interview and when you listen to him sing, when he was singing and when he was talking, he was very intelligent and not, he wasn't really a mess talking, but he could, as soon as he got himself inside of a song, it was like, oh, okay, I this is why he's an icon,
Yeah.
And, but yeah, that's one of my favorite interviews in the book, because I get into his social. I mean, he was the first country star, Johnny Cash, to really throw himself into. I mean, he did a concept album called Trail of Tears, Songs of the American Indian, about the plight of the Native Americans. And his record company didn't want him to release that. And he was just like, well, this is my album. So
right.
So, but and so he and Pete connected on that level.
Oh yeah, definitely. He was always connected to the natives. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just social justice and music, folk music as a means of communicating concepts to listeners of freedom and standing up to fascism and being realizing that there's people out there that are being mistreated by powerful forces, usually the government, and but using folk music as a way to communicate that to other people, so they'll know about it, because they're not going to learn, at least in the 60s, they weren't going to be learning about that kind of stuff in school,
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah, and also I love the connection with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And that Bob, I didn't know that Bob was listening to his music, Johnny Cash's music, when he was in Minnesota, even before he got to New York.
Yeah, Bob Dylan, he's a walking musical encyclopedia, and he was the one, and when he was the great white hope of folk music, in the early days, the Blowing in the Wind days, and the before he went electric, before he was the great white. before Newport. He was the one that went around and told all of his peers, they're like, Johnny Cash we got to get him at the Newport Folk Festival.
Right.
That was 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And Dylan, because Dylan was really kind of a demigod at that point, people were like, okay, if you say so. He's like, yeah. He's like, you absolutely have to. They're like, the country guy that I walked around,
right. Yeah.
That guy. He's like, yes, he's the real deal. You got to get him on stage. And so that was a historic concert for Johnny, because he suddenly he was in front of all of these mostly white kids, and they were apparently it was an incredible performance. And from that time onward, the counterculture embraced Johnny Cash more so than any other country star, except for maybe Willie Nelson. But Willie Nelson did not get embraced by the counterculture until the 70s. But the counterculture embraced Cash after that 64. He was kind of anointed by Dylan. And
oh, right.
Yeah.
And he also was left wing. He was more left in his politics too, which is interesting for a country singer.
He was, but at the same time, it was fascinating to me that he really did seem progressive in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out something after I turned the book in, and I was doing an event in Nashville, and there's this woman that was on a panel with me. And at Americana Fest, and she did her due diligence. Some country star, modern day country star, one of the guys in Big and Rich, one of those guys, who were very conservative and whatever, said in an interview, if Johnny Cash were alive today, he'd be a Republican. And so this woman is a journalist, and she was like, and so she did some poking around, and she found that Johnny Cash, because it's in the public domain, this kind of information.
Okay.
The only time that he showed up to vote was in 2000. He showed up in Nashville to vote for his friend Al Gore. So that's a little tidbit, important.
Okay.
And to vote for Al Gore, and he was not registered. And they were like,
that's interesting.
They're like, Mr. Cash, you have to register if you want to vote. And he was like, really? And there's no record of him voting after that.
Oh, wow.
That I know of. I could be wrong, but up to that point, according to this.
So he never voted. That's amazing.
This pretty reputable journalist. So there's that. But he did clearly align himself. I mean, he was anti-war. He was against the Iraq War.
Right.
And back in he was against the Vietnam War.
Right. I know. Yeah. That's why. Let's talk about Men in Black. Now, why did he write the song Men in Black, and why did he wear black?
Well, there's 3 different stories in the book, 3 different answers that he gave over the decade to interviewers, and I thought this is kind of funny. The first one that I could find. He was talking to an Irish journalist, and she was like, what's the story? Why do you always wear black? And he said, well, when my band and I had our first performance, our first gig was in a church basement. I think it was 1954 and maybe 53. And he said the only color of clothes that we had that matched was black. So, but then he wrote the song Man in Black, and that song is just a long list of reasons why he wears black.
Right.
And the gist of it is that he wears the black for the poor and the beaten down and the people who are on the fringes of society and are don't have it, they're not privileged. For the people that are poor, people of color, people addicted to drugs, people, that soldiers in Vietnam.
Well, that's what he was saying. Yeah, he was mourning the soldiers in Vietnam too. That's what he.
Yeah, one of the wear the black. For,
right.
What is it, the line in that song? I wear the black for all the ones who've died,
right, yeah,
believing that the Lord was on their side.
right.
And
Really, I love that. Yeah, that was a great line. Yeah,
it was risky for him to do that, anyway, and that came out, I think, 71, and when the war was still raging, and
right.
but he was able to keep his fan base of people who are largely conservative. But again, I don't think you can compare him. There's the only people that really come close, I think, are Willie Nelson and Dolly Parton, of people who country people who whose fan base is, just spans a huge spectrum of people politically and socially and in every way. But anyway, so he said then he said that. Okay. He said, I wear the black in honor of, the soldiers in Vietnam. And then in the 80s, another interviewer, this guy, Don Gagné, who is a correspondent on NPR, it was his first big break, Don Gagné's first big break. It was in the 80s, and Johnny Cash was playing at a state fair, where Don Gagné lived, and he went and he kind of stalked him a little bit. And then Cash comes out of the bus and he goes up to him, this totally green kid, and he's like, Mr. Cash, can I ask you a few questions? And Johnny Cash was like, sure. Hit me, and so one of the questions he asked was, why black? And Johnny Cash just said, it's slimming.
Oh, that's funny.
He said, because it's
okay.
And then he kind of laughed because it's a joke,
Yeah.
But, you would think, I guess, that having been asked that question
a million times,
that people would stop asking him that question,
But all they have to do is listen to the song.
No, right?
Really,
He's got a new reason for it, but anyway. So those are the three reasons that he said he wore black.
But he did say, like, later in life that he wished he had, like, he had that outlaw, the black look, that outlaw look.
Yeah.
And he said he wished that he had changed that it was like.
Yeah. He was ambivalent about that. That was another
later on.
Yeah. Just before he passed away, when he was doing the recording things with Rick Rubin. Yes, he was being interviewed for, I think that one was for, I can't remember which No Depression magazine, I think. But anyway, yes, he was saying, I kind of regret a little bit signing off on this image of who I am.
Yeah,
dark, outlaw, tortured soul.
Right.
All this stuff. He's like, because that's not me. He's like,
he was happy. He was a happy family man, and he was, he had his daughters and June and everything, and
yeah, he could. I mean, by all accounts, he could definitely go really dark, like darker than anybody. But at the same time, there's so many stories of him, and there's, you just have to look at I looked at the 3 seasons of the Johnny Cash show, from 69, 70, early 71. And that show is really lighthearted, and it's a family show, and he's funny. He's really funny a lot of the time. He always has comedians on the show.
I'm going to have to watch it. Yeah. I mean, I've seen a little bit, like Bob Dylan. I saw the duet.
Yeah. That's famous. But, he had the Monkees on there.
Oh, wow.
He had the Monkees, Mahalia Jackson, Louis Armstrong.
Was Pete on there? He said he wanted Pete Seeger, but then did he get him on?
I'm not sure.
Because he was blacklisted. I'm not sure if he was still blacklisted.
By that time, he wasn't. The blacklist was over. But
well, anyway, I know he said he wanted Pete on, so I have to split that up.
Yeah, I mean but anyway, the point though is that and then you listen to. It wasn't until really he started doing the Rick Rubin stuff that they really leaned in, because the whole thing that Rick Rubin, and I love that era. I call that the surprise fourth act.
Yeah,
Cash's life, because he had kind of been
so close.
What?
So they were so close too. They really were like so tight.
They were so tight, and but that was, from what I can gather, that was Rick Rubin's choice to really lean into the darkness, both visually and musically, because of course they did the the first song out of that was a murder ballad called Delia's Gone. It's just pretty harrowing murder ballad. That's from the first American recordings. And the images on the CDs and that they used to market it was just Johnny Cash looking really intense and, you know, with like big dogs on chains, you know, and stuff like that.
Oh,
and,
okay.
and, you know, he was like, yeah, it's not inaccurate, but it's certainly not the whole story. But, you know, I don't know that those records would have sold as well if you'd had a photograph of him laughing, you know, just like,
Right, yeah.
you know, American Recordings 1, Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
You know,
that was the look that he,
But he was like, he, you know, he realized that people had glommed on to this notion of him as like this dark character.
Right.
And he's like, that's not.
All right, but this, no, it's really interesting. So anyway, I want to go back to the beginning. Okay, so 1954, when he approached Sam Phillips, I think it's fascinating. He wanted to do gospel music, and Sam Phillips said, absolutely not. You know, I want you to do original. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But he did do devotional, patriotic, historical, protest, and humorous songs.
Sure. Yeah, all through his career he did those. And some, you know, A Boy Named Sue is one of his biggest hits, you know. And that's Shel Silverstein wrote that. And that's a comedy, you know, it's a comedy song. It's like a novelty song. And but you're right. Yeah, he initially, because there was no, the term rock and roll or even the term country music had not yet been coined in 1954. And people were just, the technology of singles, you know, 45 RPM singles was still relatively new, and LPs also relatively new. And people had no idea, you know, they were like, okay, well, we'll call this folk music, or we'll call this rockabilly, you know. And so he was, but Johnny Cash wasn't interested in any of that. His favorite thing to his dying day was gospel. That's what he grew up with. That's what his mom taught him. His mom, Carrie Rivers Cash, was she was the musician in the family. You know, she was self-taught. She played piano, she played guitar, and they were very religious, you know. And she taught him. They would sing together when he was a little boy, gospel songs. You know, that's all. And you know, he was into the folk music, you know, from the 40s as well, you know, whether it was the Carter family or Jimmy Rogers, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's what he wanted to do. And Sam Phillips was like, no, I can't sell that. And he said, I have this kid, this Elvis Presley kid, and they didn't know what to make of Elvis, you know. And when That's All Right Mama came out, people were like, what is this? Because again, no one had coined the term rock and roll yet. Hadn't been done. And they're like, is it like hillbilly bop, or is it rockabilly, or what is it? You know, it sounds like black music, but it's a white guy. So,
right.
They're confused. And anyway, but so we wouldn't need Sam Phillips wouldn't do so he said, go write a song, go write a song that's kind of up tempo and upbeat, like That's All Right Mama, and come back. Because Sam Phillips looked at Johnny Cash, who was then, I think, 24 years old or thereabouts. You know, this incredibly charismatic, strange, you know, handsome, tall drink of water standing in his doorway. Sam Phillips was a genius, you know, and he was like, this guy's got something. Because Cash did play him a couple of gospel songs, one that he wrote called Belshazzar. And Sam Phillips was like, no, but he knew that there was something there. So legend has it, and this is in the book, Johnny Cash had written a poem. He'd been writing poems his whole life. And he'd written a poem when he was in service. He was stationed during peacetime in West Germany. And he'd written a poem called Hey Porter, which is, you know, a poem about coming home on the train and being really excited to get home. And so he went with Marshall Grant and Luther Perkins, bass player, guitar player, respectively. And apparently it took him a couple of weeks and because they were really not very accomplished technically musicians, and they didn't know what they were doing. But he was like, I think we can turn this into something good. And they went in, a couple weeks later with Hey Porter, and Sam Phillips heard it, and he was like, that's what I'm talking about. And so that was the beginning, was that song. And then Cash just kept the Sun years prior, I'm going to say pre Johnny Cash getting, I think the drug problems began in the late 50s, early 60s, but there's a period between, say, 55 and about 58, 59, where like almost all the classic Johnny Cash songs that we know today, it was like one after the other, bam, bam, bam. He was really in the zone.
Okay.
And they sound, I always tell people when I do book events, they sound, actually to my ears, they sound better than they ever have. They're so raw and authentic, and there's no pretense about them. And there's not a lot there. It's his voice, his guitar, which is and an electric guitar and bass. A lot of it has no drums on it. But anyway, so so that was the beginning for him. But yeah, he and Sam Phillips had a great relationship too, And yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. And so from there he went to Columbia?
Yes, he did. And then because he was still, as he got more famous and more successful, it's kind of weird to me that, but I think it says a lot about Sam Phillips. You kind of would think that like he is, after Elvis Presley left Sun for RCA, and then Johnny Cash just kept saying, I really want to record a gospel album. Can I do some gospel? I don't want to focus on that, but I do want to
do it. Yeah.
Sam Phillips was so incredibly stubborn to his detriment. He was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then so Columbia, where they were like, yeah, of course you can do not only that, but we'll give you a better deal, financially, a better cut of your royalty. We'll give you a higher royalty rate, and you can record a gospel album. So he's, needless to say,
right.
He was like, okay, Sam, see you later.
Right.
And that's when he went to Columbia.
But I think he still had a good relationship, right, with Sam after. Mm-hmm. Like he still did some more recordings with him or something later. Something.
Probably. Yeah, he did go back to Sun Records. Yeah, I'm sure they stayed. It was not a personal thing at all. It was a business thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they stayed friends. I don't think that's another thing actually, is that so many that I realized reading all these interviews and reading these, just doing a deep dive into his life, is how much forgiveness and how much him being forgiven by other people and him forgiving other people is such an integral part of his story. Like he, as an addict, he did a lot of damage to a lot of his.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
As addicts will. He hurt the people he loved the most.
Right. And what June went through, it's like amazing.
Yeah, you got that right. And
it's in the movie Walk the Line, but when you're reading about it more too.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. But and then
but he's very religious, and it's that at June too. They're all very religious and prayerful people. Oops, my thing just fell. It's okay. That's all right.
He came back to the church after in the late 60s, after he and June got together. She was like, I think going to church. I think you need to. And he became good friends with Billy Graham. That's another, kind of very fascinating thing about his story, is that, here he was, he's outspoken for a lot of what would be classified as liberal causes or progressive causes. And yet, one of his best friends was Billy Graham, this
right.
Conservative, very conservative, icon of the right.
Yeah.
But apparently when they would get together, they wouldn't talk politics. They would talk about music. They would talk about the Bible.
Right.
And
he did record the new let's see, the new James version, the King's
Yeah.
Testament or something. Yeah, he did do that too. Yeah.
I keep meaning to get that so I can listen to it while I'm driving around the Catskills. I can listen to read the Bible.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
He was a scholar, and he even in the 70s he became even more of a scholar. Like he kind of took time off from writing songs and being a music star to take correspondence courses in Bible study with June. And so they did that. They invested a lot of time in reading the Bible and learning about the Bible. And he was a brilliant man and could wax on about, he says this in one of the interviews in there. He's like, if you don't want to talk about religion, we don't have to talk about religion. I can talk about a lot of other things, He's like, I can talk about Roman history. You want to get into that?
Right. He's really into history, right?
He's a history buff, and he was a amateur genealogist. Like he had done all of this. Roseanne was on Finding Your Roots a few years ago.
Oh,
yeah, that's pretty great episode. And Gates, the host, says to her, he acknowledges that Johnny Cash was like he was a really good genealogist. He had done a lot of research and work about where the Cashes came from, which turned out it was Scotland.
Right.
But anyway, so he was in the 70s. The 70s was a fascinating decade because he didn't really produce a lot of music that is considered his best, in the 70s.
Well, he said the TV show actually was not good for his music career after.
That's pretty sad. There's a lot, again, like I discovered, there's a lot of things wherein people will say, and he'll say it, and other people will say it. They'll say, "Yeah, well, the reason why he stopped making good records was because of the TV show."
Right.
And then, but then Marshall Grant, his longtime bass player, dear friend, and he wrote a memoir of his time with Johnny Cash. Marshall Grant was not only the bass player and the co-writer of a lot of early songs, but he also was the manager, and he did most of the driving. When they would get into these massive tank cars and to drive all over the country. And anyway, he said in his memoir that he just felt like Johnny Cash had gotten everything he ever wanted in life.
Mm-hmm.
He was financially secure, and his family was financially secure, and he could go out, and if he needed money, he could go out and do a tour, any time of the year in any part of the world. Those kind of thing. It's like not that many, like Waylon Jennings or Chris Christopherson or any of his contemporaries, Merle Haggard, whatever. Those guys could not just load a bunch of people up on a plane, fly out the other side of the world, like Australia and New Zealand, the Far East, Sweden, and just play for like 2 months.
That's amazing.
So he could do that, and he loved that. He loved the road. He loved being on the road, and that was his favorite thing. So, Marshall Grant says that he thinks that Cash just wasn't really inspired to put his creative energy back into writing songs. And whereas, when he was young and hungry, he was doing that a lot. And it was all about writing songs. But in the 70s, he kind of, the 70s and the 80s, his output diminished, but he was never idle. He was busy all the time doing stuff.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. 48 songs on the pop charts, 135 on the country charts, sold more than 50 million records, and he was the biggest country artist of all time. That's amazing.
It is amazing. It's not,
it's absolutely incredible.
The numbers are amazing. And also, you go to you can go to other parts of the world. Pretty sure you could go to China or I don't know, North Korea. Well, maybe not North Korea, but you could go almost anywhere in the world and find Johnny Cash fans. And it's hard to figure out. People are trying to figure out why that is. what is it about him?
Mm-hmm.
What is it about him? Because
Relatable? Is it just so relatable? Because he talks about the down and out, and he talks about
what
people.
is that? And he has a sense, and the sound of his voice. I think a lot of it. I think personally, my personal opinion is, I think a lot of it is the sound of his voice, and because he could write a song and move an audience or a listener. But he could also cover a song. He could do his own version of somebody else's song,
Right.
as he did mostly with the Rick Rubin stuff, and turn it into this compelling piece of art that you just have to keep listening to. And like, what's going on in here? And Rick Rubin was, he knew that he had to construct those. I guess they did 4 albums before Johnny Cash passed away. But those albums are all built around Johnny Cash's voice. And
it was a box set, right?
It became, eventually, after he passed away, yes, it was a box set. But, the American recording series, I think the first one came out, I think, in 92 or thereabouts, maybe 93. And it was his surprise hit because, like I said, he had been dropped. Columbia had dropped him.
Right.
And then, which really incensed a lot of people. They're like,
right.
I mean, it was pretty shameful. And they're like, well, he's not selling any more records, and we gotta pay attention to,
the numbers.
Urban Cowboy and Garth Brooks and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
And but so he had and then he was on Mercury for a few albums, and then Mercury dropped him, or they parted ways, and his health started to decline. He couldn't go on the road anymore.
Right.
And Rick Rubin, who had been at that time was primarily known as the guy who brought you the Beastie Boys and a death metal band called Slayer, and some other hip hop. I think LL Cool J. I think he produced LL Cool J too. So here's this guy who comes to Johnny Cash, and Johnny Cash doesn't know who he is. He says that he thought he was being approached by a hobo, because that's what Rick Rubin still looks like.
Well, his look.
That's
right.
his look.
That's his look.
Yeah.
And he's barefoot, and he looks like a hippie hobo.
He is an old. I'm pretty sure he is an old hippie. But anyway, so he comes to him and he's like, "I want to make an album with you." Rick Rubin was he had a carte blanche. He essentially had a blank check, and they gave him his own label. They're like, do whatever you want, sign whoever you want, record whoever you want. And Sony, I think owned that. Was that right? I can't remember who the parent company was. But anyway, maybe I don't think it was Sony. I can't remember. But anyway, but they were like, Rick Rubin, you do whatever you want. And he's like, well, what I want to do is record a Johnny Cash album. And that was the last thing anybody expected, Like I love Johnny Cash, and I don't think that what I hear Rick Rubin saying, what I hear, the potential that I hear in the man's voice, I don't hear that in the recordings that he's been doing for the last 30 years, and I think I can get that. For Johnny Cash is like, well, how do you propose to do that? He's like, well, I'm going to bring you over to my house, and I'm going to sit you down in front of like a really good microphone, and I just want you to sing whatever you want. And he was like, really? And he's like, yeah, I want you to sing whatever you want. It's just going to be you and the guitar singing whatever you want. And he was like, okay. And it sounds amazing. And it was so stark. That first one is just Johnny Cash and a guitar. That's it. That's it. No, there's no Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. There's no hot shit LA musicians on that. It's just him. And it's incredibly powerful. And so from then on, he had this new lease on life. And, and Rosanne, I interviewed her when I was putting the book together. And she was saying that, she says in the in the book, because she gave me a couple of things that she wrote about her dad are in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And she said when she heard that Rick Rubin wanted to produce her dad, she was terrified. She was like, oh man, really? What's he gonna do? Like create like a hip hop?
Right. Oh God.
Singing? That sounds terrible. What a terrible idea. But her dad was like, no, honey, I think this guy, I trust him. And so now Roseanne's like, we all owe Rick Rubin a great debt. He really gave my dad his creative life back.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really depressed. He wasn't doing anything, and he was really like, I guess that's it, you know. And but anyway, so he put out amazing albums. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to listen to that. I love the story about Chris Christopherson. Okay, so he was a janitor at Columbia, right?
Yeah, he was.
And then he was trying to get songs, and he would hand them to June,
right?
Put them in her purse, and then she would open them up and hand them to Johnny.
Yeah.
And then what about the helicopter story? You want to talk about that?
Sure, of course. That's one of the best stories in the book. Chris Christopherson was from a military family. He was actually teaching. I think he was like at that time, he had done 2 tours of duty in Vietnam and had learned to fly a helicopter. And one of the many things that he could do, but he had left, he was teaching at West Point, and he had left to go to Nashville to become he wanted to become a country songwriter. It was his initial, I don't think he was so interested in being a performer, but he wanted to write songs. And the only job he could get was as a janitor in the recording studio where Johnny Cash frequented. But yes, that's part of it. He kept giving. Needless to say, I mean, he was an incredibly attractive man. You know, the hottest janitor in Nashville, I'm sure, by a long shot. But so June, as we say down south, took a shine to him, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll give you your tape to John." And Johnny Cash wouldn't listen to tapes. You know, he just wouldn't listen to them. And by the way, Chris Christopherson was risking his job because he was told,
right.
He was told under no circumstances are you allowed to give any of our clients your cassettes, but he did it anyway.
Right.
So finally, story is that, I mean, there's several versions of the story that I talked about a lot, which I guess, and Holly, you know, my wife Holly is a biographer, and
who I interviewed last week.
Right. And she, and every time she's done a biography, part of her job is to try and find which is the real story.
Right. Okay.
There's always multiple.
Okay. Right.
Multiple versions. And this is one of those. But my favorite version is that Johnny and June Johnny's taking a nap, and June woke him up and said, John, you have to wake up. Some fool has landed his helicopter. And you need to go deal with this. And he was furious because he was napping, you know, and he was like, arr. So he goes out, and there's Chris Christopherson getting out of the helicopter. And he hands it to him and says, Mr. Cash, I'd sure appreciate it if you give this a listen. Now, Johnny Cash says that the song on that cassette was Sunday Morning Coming Down. And Chris Christopherson has gone on record as saying it was not that song. It was another song. But the truth, I mean, the incontrovertible fact is that Johnny Cash did soon thereafter record Sunday Morning Coming Down, which is an incredible song that Chris Christopherson wrote, and it was a big hit. So it kickstarted Christopherson's career, and then Johnny and June were like, Chris, you need to get on stage and perform. You know, you're really good looking, and you know you can have a career both as a songwriter and as a live performer. And Christopherson apparently was not into it. He was, I don't want to do that. And they literally had to kick him out on stage to open for them.
Right, yeah. And then he got a big review in New York Times.
Right, and he was, you know, he was off and running.
Right.
But yeah, the Christopherson, amazing character, that guy. Yeah, you know, he's probably not long for this world. Christopherson, I know he's in really ill health, and but man, a biography of that guy is going to be
will be interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So talking about your wife, Holly George Warren, who I just interviewed about the Dolly Parton book that she wrote with Dolly.
Right.
She's in your book too.
That's right.
Right. She interviewed them too, June and Johnny.
She interviewed June and Johnny multiple times, actually.
Right.
And she interviewed June by herself a couple times. I mean, June was a great artist in her own right, and she made a choice to put the majority of her creative energy into being Johnny Cash's wife and all that entailed. But at the end of the day, she was, like, you can see it actually on the Pete Seeger clip from 1966.
Right. Yeah.
Is that she's sitting there with the guitar, and she's one of the Carters. You know what I mean? The Carter sisters and the Carter family, especially Mother Maybelle Carter, is she was a very influential guitar player. And anyway, so but June was a natural musician. Johnny Cash was an incredible performer, but he had limited capabilities as a musician. And he definitely could do what needed to be done to get the songs across. But he didn't have a lot of skill as a instrumentalist, and he would be the first. He said he blamed it on all the cotton picking he did when he was a kid in Arkansas.
Okay.
Which is true. I mean, he picked up, it's a incredibly hard life for the Cash in Arkansas. Yeah, and he was out there in the cotton fields picking cotton. Wow. All through his teenage years. Right. And anyway, so but June, June. There's a great story of when Johnny and June were they were touring with the band in, I think, South Korea in the early 60s, and they were on the bill with another band, and this other band was opening for them. And just before the opening band was to go on, somebody comes back into the dressing room and says, "Oh my God, our banjo player can't make the gig. We have to get a banjo player. Does anyone here play banjo?" And June's like, "I'll do it." And so they she went out there, they put a banjo in her hands, and she apparently brought the house down, and so then she comes off stage, and Johnny says to her, "June, I didn't know you could play banjo." And she says, "I can't."
I know, it's an amazing story. That's amazing. I know.
And she's like, "I was just faking it." And
that's incredible.
She was self-deprecating, a lot, and but she was a great musician in her own right. And she thankfully towards the end of her life, she did record a few critically acclaimed albums.
Okay.
Just her, which are worth seeking out. But of course they were on small labels, and but they're great. They're really good. And but yeah, she was a force. She was a force. And
that's really neat.
Yeah. She was great. But oh yeah, you were talking about Holly interviewing Cash, and yes, Holly may have, we couldn't really figure it out, but Holly may have, even though her interview is the second to the last in the book.
Right.
She may have been, we couldn't get the dates down. The one after that was conducted just a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks before Cash passed away.
It was 2003.
Yes.
Yes, and he was really not doing well. I know.
Yeah, he was supposed to die so many times, and he just kept bouncing back.
Right. Yeah.
And, I mean, I am friends with Rosanne, and we were friends during that time, and I was still in pretty close touch with her, and when his health was declining in the 90s, and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, we're doing a prayer vigil for my dad. He's got and then he would recover, and he would, from his hospital bed, he would say, let's record some more music."
Right. Yeah. Oh.
So, but anyway, yes, Holly's interview with him, it's an interview with him and Rosanne together. Right. That's one of the last in the book. And she, so yeah, I was really glad to get that one, because that's never been published anywhere.
Oh, good. Oh, great. And then the last one was with what's Sylvie?
Sylvie Simmons.
Yeah, that's amazing. And she moved in. It was like moved in with him and
Yeah.
taking care of him at the end while he's still recording with Rick Rubin.
Right. And she's an amazing woman too, an amazing writer. And yeah, she was there, and she was able to convey how even as he was literally at death's door, he was still this incredibly vital. He still had this creative force that was keeping him going, and like it was arduous, but Rick Rubin was like, doesn't matter, let's just do it, whatever it takes. If it takes 2 days to get this vocal take for this song, so be it. You know, if you have to if you have to sing a verse and then rest and then sing a verse and then fine, whatever it takes. So, but yeah, so I remember when Holly came back from that interview, she was very, it
was hard.
It was hard. It was hard. It was clear what was
to see him like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because he had been so vital and robust for so long, but he did not take very good care of himself. In terms of I think Sylvie talks about that too. It's like in terms of his diet, and Rick Rubin was trying to get him to eat healthy.
Oh, right.
Like a losing battle to get him. You can't have sausage and fried eggs every morning, Mr. Cash. It's not good.
Okay, right. Oh God.
Not good for you.
Okay.
But anyway, but that's one of my favorite interviews. It's the one that Holly did with him.
Yeah, it was great, really good. And so he was inducted into the Country and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He didn't feel like Dolly too. He didn't feel like he deserved to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then when he gave his speech, he didn't know what to say. And then June said, "Ask God what to say."
Right. Yeah. That's a great story. Yeah. Now I'm remembering that was 92. And that was sort of the beginning of this surprise fourth act, was because you're right. He was it's interesting. You can see his acceptance speech on YouTube, and it's before he had this comeback, and he's in this period where he's been put out to pasture by the Nashville establishment, and yet he's starting to get recognition. Like U2 had recorded a song with him, I think in 91, and that was, well received. And then, he goes up there and he looks really humble and uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
And then, but apparently Keith Richards came up to him. Keith Richards was there, and he was like singing obscure deep cuts from Johnny Cash albums from the 60s, and Johnny Cash was like, I guess maybe I do belong here. And it was shortly after that Rick Rubin approached him. So I think Rick Rubin approached him in like 93.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, that was he got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and of course he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My God, I mean, he's a pillar of rock and roll. Even before Dylan was like on anybody's radar, Johnny Cash was already doing material that was poetic, and yet very kind of, the music was like really rural and folky and very simple, and it's clear if you go into the early years how you can hear how Cash influenced Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, just like Pete Seeger. I think Pete Seeger's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And but yeah, anyone who did those kind of like invested songs or like made it a principle to learn songs or write songs that had teeth to them, that didn't, in the grand old folk tradition, whether it was songs about injustice or people, I don't know, deep songs about social strife, about that kind of thing. That's been part of the American music canon for since the 19th century. And anyway, so of course he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, definitely. And some of his records are so, like, when I play them, his songs can be, you can make a rock and roll, you can easily make a rock and roll version of a Johnny Cash song. I mean, they fit. You can do them straight up country, or you can give them a little bit of jet fuel, and they will fly as rock and roll songs. So I mean, the Grateful Dead.
You do concerts and just do it like a Johnny Cash concert?
I have done when this book came out. I put together a show to promote the book.
Okay.
And I called it More Than the Man in Black, because that's the gist of it. And because again, you can sit with just a guitar and play almost all of his songs.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. But I've also done, full on concerts with a full band. That's fun. But yeah, I can, I was happy to learn, I guess probably between 5 and 10 new Johnny Cash songs to promote. Yeah, to add to my pretty extensive repertoire of songs. But yeah, I was happy to do that. And I don't have any plans. There's nothing on the books right now.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot last year and the year before. But as it is right now.
That's great. We could talk about this for hours, but we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
So is there anything else you want to say about the book?
Well, yeah, if anyone, if anyone wants a copy of it, you can go to your local bookstore. If I'm pretty sure they have it at the Golden Notebook.
In Woodstock.
In Woodstock, thank you.
Here's
Yes.
the book.
Yes, and anybody who's watching this who wants the book, who has a local bookseller, you can go and they can order it, and it'll be shipped out in a couple of days. You can get online.
Is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
It's all over the place. If you Google Cash on Cash,
okay,
you have to Google Cash on Cash and then my name, because needless to say, if you just Google Cash on Cash, you're gonna get a lot of stuff that has nothing to do with Johnny Cash.
Oh, okay.
It'll be like investment opportunities,
right. Okay.
Your cash, but anyway, yeah, it's all over the place. It's not hard to find.
Okay, great. And how long it must have taken you a long time to put all these it's so extensive, your interviews and your editing and the index, and it's and your credits, everything.
Thank you. It took about a year.
Okay.
Almost the entirety of 21.
Okay.
I was working on it, and then it came out in autumn of 22. But yeah, it was because it was during COVID times.
During COVID you did that, yeah.
During lockdown, it was my. I couldn't really.
A lot of people wrote books during lockdown.
Yes. I couldn't. Needless to say, didn't have a lot of gigs that year.
Right.
And at least not indoor gigs.
Right.
But, so yeah, I felt really fortunate that Chicago Review Press, my publisher, they accepted my proposal, and they're like, go for it. And I got to go to Nashville and go into the Country Music Hall of Fame archives, which was really fun. That was really fun.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I had never done that. Holly does that frequently, and sifting through archival materials and stuff, and that I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would. Just the treasure hunting aspect of it, and also you go into this room. It's climate controlled, and they have boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of old magazines and old and books and newspaper clippings and all kinds of stuff they have there. And so you get to handle. It's not all in like microfilm. Some of it is, but most of it is you reaching into these boxes and you're pulling out these magazines that are really fat and from the 70s.
Okay. Oh wow.
I loved that. I love doing that.
Yeah, it's so fun to do deep dive. That's why I like doing this. It's fun I love to explore and get into other people's lives.
Yeah, me too.
Really fun.
It was a first for me, but I really enjoyed it.
That's great. All right, Robert, it's been a real joy. I'm so glad I got to do this interview with you and read the book, and it's so fascinating. And thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and I'll see you later.
I'll see you around.
Okay.
See you around
Bye.
campus. Bye.
Bye. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, learning more about Johnny Cash. It's been fascinating for me, and I hope for you as well. So next week, I have Carolyn Hester. She was a force in the folk music scene in Greenwich Village in the 60s, early 60s, and she actually discovered Bob Dylan and introduced him, and that's how he got into Columbia Records. And so anyway, I'll be interviewing her, and hope you can join next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And lots of love and joy, and hope you and have a good rest of your day or night whenever you're watching this. And I'm glad okay, good. I'm glad you liked it. And you're welcome. And I will see you next week. And keep smiling, keep sweet. Join the Smile Revolution. Okay, I'm going to sign off with my credits. And if you like my show, if you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and make a comment, that always helps. And I'm on Facebook under Princess Wow Network, and on my YouTube channel. It's actually, if you look up Princess Wow Smile Revolution, you can find my show. Okay, so thanks a lot, and lots of love, and see you later. Here I go with my credits. Bye. It's called the Smile Revolution that comes, goes round and back to you. So smile.